event here today, Forward to Fall, as we examine a safe and responsible economic restart, rebound here in Northwest North Carolina. And we certainly have a number of different topics that we're going to discuss today as it relates to that, kind of where we are economically and where hopefully we will see conditions move here in the near future. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items here before we get started. I want to thank Bill Slagle and our friends at EDPNC for helping us organize this once again. Bill and his team have been very helpful to us here in Boone during the COVID phenomenon with just getting resources out to members and community members throughout our region. So thanks, Bill, for all that you have done to support this moving forward. And also Dr. Pat Mitchell. She's on one of these screens somewhere. Dr. Mitchell, I know many of you know, no stranger to actually like an economic development Hall of Famer. She has been very helpful in connecting us with resources for things like this and what we intend to do with our Vision Northwest North Carolina program moving forward. So it's great to have Dr. Mitchell in the audience today, and we look forward to continuing to work with her on future events like this. So again, real quick from an operational standpoint, we'll be using all of the fun and exciting Zoom features that you should know like the back of your hand by now. We will be taking questions via chat throughout the course of the event. So if you do have a question for one of our panelists, feel free to go ahead and ask that question in the chat, and we'll get to that either during their prepared remarks or immediately following our last presentation. We'll also have the opportunity for some Q&A there as well. We do want to make sure that we are focused on the time that we have allotted, so we'll try to end as close to 12:30 as we possibly can. But we do continue to encourage your questions and your opportunity to have dialogue with these folks. We do ask that you keep your Zoom window muted, and I'll do my best to kind of monitor that from here as well. That way we've just got clarity with our speakers that are presenting, so we can make sure that we hear that without any feedback. We are recording this today, so we will be sending this back around to you a little bit later this afternoon. As soon as we get that wonderful link back from Zoom with the recording, we'll put this in on our YouTube channel and send it back out to you along with an archive of the chat window as well. So I do ask that you ask questions in the format of to everyone rather than to just me individually. And that way, when we get that archive, everybody can see what the context of questions are and kind of follow along that way. So again, just to kind of set some context here, our chamber friends in the room here today that have helped gather all of you throughout Northwest North Carolina have been helpful today in helping us establish this is a true regional conversation. We do have representatives from all 12 counties in EDPNC's Northwest Prosperity Zone here today. We do want to take the opportunity to send good wishes and thoughts to our colleagues in Allegheny County dealing with just one more 2020 challenge that came our way on Sunday, and certainly hope everybody is faring well through that, and know that we're all here as a resource if we can do anything for you throughout the Prosperity Zone. But one more curveball, right? And hopefully we can scratch that one off the bingo card and move on here. But we did want to make sure that we framed this conversation today in a way that benefits us regionally. Certainly we all have tourism interests. We all have interest in what comes next from a development standpoint. We all have interest in how education is going to be implemented here in our communities for the next several weeks and months as we continue to kind of look at what operationally is different about things, but also kind of using this opportunity too to get together, see everyone's face, and remember that we are a region and we have strength within that region. And while some of the things that we are implementing in our communities may be specific to our communities, a lot of what we're talking about from an operational perspective, whether it's from the business side, the government side, or just simply the implementers that are putting a lot of these things into place, there is some strength in understanding what is going on in our neighboring counties and how we may be able to apply some of those same principles to what we're trying to do. So again, I encourage you to look up and down the list and see who is here, and remember that we're all friendly colleagues here. So if there is anybody that's on this call today that can be of help to you, please know that as a region, we are stronger when we work together, and hopefully everybody is operating with that thought in mind, of being helpful to those that are working through these challenges. I think some of the dialogue that we will have today, especially as it relates to tourism, will help us think some too about what the next steps may be for us regionally to show ourselves and hopefully grow into a position of strength that we'll be able to utilize all of our efforts and resources in getting people back in our communities when it's safe and responsible to do so. So with all of that said, I want to take a moment to introduce our panelists, and I'll introduce them in the order that we will see them present today. Talia Freeman is the Director of Marketing at Beech Mountain Resort. Talia is also a member of the Board of Directors here at the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce, on faculty at Lees McRae College over in Banner Elk, and is very well versed in a number of things from an economic development and tourism perspective here as well, but also helping to operate a 365-day-a-year tourism destination that is about to pivot into a new season and some new challenges there. We felt like Talia was the right person to have some conversation with us today about what Beech Mountain has done, pivoting throughout this whole entire process, right? It hasn't just necessarily been about spring to summer, summer to fall. It's been about looking at this from a year-long perspective and making some good strategic decisions there. So we'll get some insight from Talia. Next to them, we'll hear from Whit Tuttell, who is the Executive Director of Visit NC, a very popular person on this call, I am sure, today, as he will share his thoughts with us about kind of what comes next. Some of the most valuable insight we got back in May when we did the last one of these was from Whit, and looking at some of the data that he was able to get through polling of people right at the onset of all this. They're trying to get a snapshot of what those travel trends would look at. And Whit, not to build you up too much here, but you were insanely accurate with what you told us back in May. And hopefully that really helped businesses understand what was coming and make the best plans that they possibly muted myself there for a second. Be ready for some of those challenges that we were facing there. So appreciate you being back with us today, and I know everybody will be excited to hear what you've got to say, hopefully. Next, we'll have Dr. Beverly Emery. She is the Deputy Superintendent from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. As we all know, education plans have been rolled out thanks in part to Governor Cooper, setting kind of that expectation of what he saw for the operation of public schools, but then each community in our region has taken their own interpretation on that as well, and what is the best plan for them moving forward. So we thought it would be good to get from Dr. Emery today a little bit more of the higher up view from what the state's perspective is and how they can best supplement and support our communities as we do make some of those decisions. And we know that there have been decisions made and then new decisions made on top of those. And I think as many of you know, all plans are subject to change, and we have seen evidence of that in so many different elements of our economy. Certainly education no different. So we appreciate Dr. Emery being here and giving us those thoughts. And then finally, we have Ben Teague, who will be joining us fourth today in our presenters order. Ben is the Vice President of Strategic Development for Biltmore Farms and brings an extensive background in economic development into today's conversation throughout his career. And one of the things I think that we're looking as we're thinking forward and trying to think a little bit more positively about what's ahead of us. We have already seen throughout our region evidence of people leaving urban areas and seeking a permanent residence in one of our 12 counties up here. You know, we want to be mindful of what some of the short-term opportunities are with that, but also some of the long-term challenges that we might need to get together as a region and address as we think about that in-migration becoming more of a norm rather than just, you know, kind of a short-term reaction of what we've seen with COVID. So Ben in his career has done so much economic development and is involved with large-scale developments now with his work with Biltmore Farms. I think he's going to be able to give us some excellent context about what we need to think about developing long-term, but obviously what we can do to best position ourselves as a region short-term as well, and not lose the identity of why these people are coming here in the first place. We don't want to become a Charlotte suburb necessarily. I don't think any of us aspire to that, but we do know that there are some amenities and some services that we can probably tout and think of as part of our calling card for those that may want to come and be a part of what we experience here in Northwest North Carolina every day. So that sets the tone for the event. Before I turn it over to Talia, I will remind you that we are recording this event, and there will probably be a few media members that will watch this event later. So just a note to all our presenters that will occur, just so you know that in advance. And we appreciate everybody being here today. We'll have a few more people joining us, I'm sure, throughout the course of this. If you do have to step out, again, that archive will be available to you, so you can catch back up on anything you missed. So without any further ado, we'll turn things over to Talia Freeman, Director of Marketing for Beech Mountain Resort. Talia, thanks for leading off today and being a part of this presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for choosing me to go first. So definitely first and foremost, I want to thank the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina for the opportunity to speak today. I'll preface this by saying that I am certainly not an expert on this, and quite frankly, I really don't know that anyone is. This is completely uncharted territory. So today, I'm just going to speak to a few of the challenges that we have faced and that we continue to face as we move into our fall and winter season. You know, our ultimate goal as a company has always been to provide a safe and quality experience for our customers, our staff, and our community. So more so now than ever before, the customer is seeking a really quick and efficient experience and is more acutely aware of how we operate and quick to notice any shortcomings. So as I speak through some of these challenges, I'm also going to note the opportunities that we have found while working through these said challenges. I think that's one of the easy things to forget through all of this is the silver linings. So we have really made a point as a company to look at all of these challenges as an opportunity to better our business model. So our first big challenge, which I would argue that probably everyone in this Zoom meeting has had at some point, is staffing. I think over the last several years, particularly, staffing has become more of a challenge for many people in the hospitality industry, and particularly even more challenging for a seasonal business. The main challenge that we're seeing right now is the need to increase our staff numbers. And we're gonna have to do this for several reasons. One reason, which I'm gonna get into a little bit later, is the expansion of our footprint. You know, through all of the implemented safety measures and making sure that our customers have ample space, we are increasing the size of our operation as a whole. So with that increased footprint, there's the need for additional staff to fill and work that space. Another reason is the simple fact that we now need to be prepared with additional staff in case we do run into a situation where someone has been exposed. We're having to really be strategic to ensure that we have essentially multiple sets of staff that are not in contact with one another. So if, for instance, something were to happen with one staff member, we would be prepared with a completely alternate workforce that can still be on property and working. So our goal this summer and as we move into our fall and winter season is to ensure that we have staff working different weekly shifts so that they don't have any overlap or contact with one another. Right now in Avery and Watauga County, we're looking at a 7-day testing window. And, you know, I've been so proud of the health department in both counties. Beech Mountain Resort sits in the middle. They're doing a great job. But this is certainly a challenge for most businesses up here. You know, so even if you have an employee with mild symptoms, you know, the days of working with a sniffle are over. You know, no longer can we take anything lightly. We've got to be even more intentional and more cautious with the health of our staff than we ever have. But, you know, if we're waiting 7 days for test results that are probably going to be negative anyways, you know, we need to be prepared in some way to strategically maintain our operation. The third challenge that we are facing, which, you know, may be a little different for some in the room, is the suspension of our J1 work visas. Right now, in the winter months, in late fall, our J1 student visas are suspended through January. So usually our students arrive in the fall and they work for us through the winter. And while these students we employ only make about 10% of our staff, it does give us a dedicated group of full-time employees. And as I've noted before, finding full-time employees can be pretty challenging for any business, particularly when it's a seasonal operation. So now I'm going to go over just a couple things that we are working towards to effectively increase our staff. So in general, my background's marketing. We're just going to be more aggressive than ever before to push our job opportunities and our work culture. That's one of the things here that keep our employees coming back is the culture here. So we'll be pushing all these employment opportunities through every touch point that we can think of, including, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Indeed, anything that we can find, we're going to try it. We will be working with local institutions to promote job and internship opportunities. That we've found that really creating an opportunity for college students to learn and grow has really helped our business model and ensure that we have enough staff. I think that the shift with the college schedules that I've noticed from Appalachian State and both Lee's McRae is definitely an opportunity for us to capitalize on that longer winter window. These students are going to be getting out late in the fall. So, that gives us an opportunity to provide an untraditional internship model. The days of people wanting to apply in person, I think are over. I think there are still people that want to do that, but it is important for businesses to really recognize and create easy and quick opportunities for people to apply online. So we've moved our application process completely to an online module so people can easily apply from their mobile device or their computer. One quick and easy way for us to do this is just to make a Google form. Those are free. You can embed them into your website and into your social media outlets. And it's a lot easier for people to apply and communicate with their phone than to try to come in person. And ultimately that eliminates more contact points with your staff. We're going to be hosting virtual job fairs, and we have been and will continue to execute virtual job interviews. And we will continue to reach to our employees through multiple channels. We've noticed we've started texting confirmations to employees once we get an application. It's a little untraditional, but it certainly is more effective for us and works, and we're going to continue to do that. And we've obviously, like a lot of people, we've really had to take a look at our operation and set our staff up to be able to work from home. That can be incredibly challenging with most aspects of our business, but we're taking a hard look at what we're doing to make sure that we can maintain productivity while we're not in the office. So, opportunities through all these staffing challenges in general, I think the pandemic has made our society a lot more acclimated to using digital platforms, and engagement online is still very high. People are way more comfortable using Zoom and other video conferencing platforms than they were in February. This has made people more comfortable with technology in general, and inevitably, I think engagement is going to increase visibility for job opportunities. So I think this is a huge opportunity for everyone. I think the use of Zoom and video conferencing has made people more efficient with time. I think that's going to help with time management with our managers on property. I do think there's some silver linings through this that will help people in the hospitality industry moving forward. Okay, second challenge, and David and I talked briefly about this, and I think a lot of people can identify with this. This is the one that's a little bit more difficult to figure out, and that's simply spacing constraints. With mandated occupancy constraints on indoor facilities, that poses a big challenge for seasonal businesses that are open in the fall and winter season. Right now we've not seen as big of an issue because we're able to push our customers outside. People want to be outside. Through my tenure here, I've noticed the morale of customers is greatly improved when they're here during good weather. You'd think as a ski resort that our customers are prepared for cold weather and, aware that they're going to be coming into an environment where it's cold and, less than favorable outside, but they certainly aren't. And when a customer is cold or uncomfortable, everything's going to be amplified. So that makes pushing people outside a little challenging certain types of the year. And as I said before, customers are more acutely aware of shortcomings. So you want them to feel comfortable. So moving into winter season where people want to warm up indoors, this is posing a significant challenge and is making us get creative to make more space. I think everyone's noticed how much through this pandemic it's costing businesses to operate. Sourcing and purchasing cleaning supplies, retrofitting registers, adding additional signage, the cost is significant. So now for businesses needing to increase their footprint on a budget, that's pretty difficult to figure out. So, how do we do that so it's cost effective? So solutions so far, and I say so far because we're still really trying to take a hard look at this. We're going to get creative. We're taking a look at our space. We're taking a hard look at the flow of traffic. We are recognizing bottlenecks and improving flow. We're going to use areas of buildings that have since been dormant and operating additional facilities for longer hours. We have a pretty large footprint here, so it is not uncommon for us to segment out operating schedules. And I think, this means that this fall and going into winter, we're really going to have a lot of our facilities open for longer just to provide additional space for our customers. Much like a lot of restaurants, we've moved out tables and chairs, and we've reorganized our seating structures to provide ample space. And we've taken a really hard look at our menu items in our restaurant to provide more grab and go type of options so that people can get in and get out quickly. And we've actually seen that has helped a lot with our summer clientele, just to keep them going through the process, keep them on the hill, biking, so they can get in and get out quickly. We don't have people always lingering in the restaurants. We've even scaled back some of our operation this year. We have scaled back our bar operation just, to make sure that we're providing a safer experience. This all seems like a hassle. It's certainly something that nobody wants to think about, but, thinking about the customer experience and the flow of traffic is a necessity for any business. So this silver lining here, a really good opportunity for businesses to take a look at their bottlenecks and the customer experience from start to finish. It's essential. So this is a good opportunity to do that and find ways to make your customer feel more important and get through the process quicker. Okay, the last challenge I'm going to talk about is just trying to figure out how to improve all of our touch points for the customer. And when I say touch points, I mean every single interaction the consumer has with our operation, from the moment they look at our website or Instagram to the time they're on property, every single touch point. We've all seen a shift in the consumer over the years where a quick and efficient experience has become more important than anything. So now through this pandemic, the consumer especially wants a quick and contactless experience. So the challenge for us has been taking a look at all of these touch points and figuring out how to execute our operation so every customer touch point provides an empathetic experience. We just talked about expanding our footprint, and one of the things we noticed this summer is spacing people out on the chairlift and in lines. It often causes a bit longer of a wait. So for us to be successful, we need every single touch point that customer has with our website, with a staff member, to be meaningful, empathetic, informative, and also impactful. So a few things we're doing right now to improve our touch points moving into our fall and winter season. We are completely overhauling our e-commerce system so that people can make a quick and easy purchase. Be able to use PayPal, one-click ordering. People are very accustomed to that. And in general, as a business model, if you don't have a quick and easy way for people to purchase items from your business, you're going to lose business. Now our customers can fill out all their waivers and rental forms prior to arrival. That will help expedite the process once they're here on property. We've retrofitted all of our waiver and rental systems so our customers can also fill them out on their phone. So instead of the days of paper rental forms or even a computer, which we do have that option, if a customer just doesn't want to touch anything, which is like most people now, you can scan a QR code and fill everything out right there from your phone. So I've actually always been pretty resistant myself in using QR codes, and I've noticed this summer just paying attention to how many customers have used it and have really between that and Apple Pay are never having to touch anything once they're on the property. So, I just noticed, mentioned Apple Pay. That's, just implementing measures with our registers so that our customers don't have to touch things. Just really trying to make sure that we've got a good, quick, and efficient checkout process. Our new online system has more automated messaging, including email, text messages that can ensure multiple communication points with information about their trip. Ultimately, our goal is to make our customers aware of the process and prepared for any operational changes. I think the more we prepare our customers prior to arrival, the happier they're going to be with the whole process. I think one of the most important things that we are having to think about is being prepared for any major operational changes and communicating that. We all saw this spring countless messages going out from businesses about operational changes. So how do you put those out so they're effective? And really, as a business, unfortunately, we have to be prepared for worst case scenarios so we can stop and pivot in a different direction. In order to do that, we've got to have multiple people prepared to execute messaging. This is hard for small businesses because you've got a small staff. If something were to happen to me and I was the only person with access to messaging at the resort, that could pose a problem. So making sure that you have people that you trust and properly trained, that's going to, help you get sleep at night and be a little bit less stressed so that you can stop and appropriately pivot. I think the silver lining through all of this, figuring out these touch points, is, that we've really had to take a hard look at the customer experience from start to finish and work diligently to improve that. I think that's something that we've needed to do. And ultimately, I really think this is going to increase our sales significantly. I think being intentional about all your touch points will increase loyalty in business across the board. I'm going to conclude with this, and then, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those. I think the most important thing that we can do across all industries is just provide a warm, honest, and empathetic customer experience. If the customer feels like they are priority and you care, they are more likely to be patient with the rest of the experience. So all these customer touch points, from the moment they look at your website to the moment they're leaving your property, they're more crucial than ever before. And now with mask and distancing, sometimes that can look a little different. So, we're just going to continue to find creative ways to connect with our guests and make them feel valued. And I think that that's all we can do. So.
Talia, thank you so much for that. That is an excellent presentation. And one quick follow-up before we move on to WIT, because we want to stay on time here. Have you seen any guidance come from the National Ski Areas Association that is helping guide your efforts in implementing some of what you're talking about for winter, but also anything in there that you feel like that may be beneficial to other outdoor related businesses? I think specifically about choosing cut and tree farms and things along those lines that are, again, dealing with people being out in sometimes less than ideal conditions. Have you seen anything that's notable in any of that guidance?
Well, in general, they've just done a really good job of fostering that community between all the resorts nationally. And they're doing a lot of, much like we're doing today, Zoom conferencing, just to talk about different HR practices, to get strategic with that, and really just kind of rallying behind all the resorts, small and large, to help with staffing issues. But they've been incredibly helpful and informative, and their website is a public website, nsaa.org, and it actually has a lot of good tips on there, which would be applicable to a lot of businesses.
We'll share that link in the chat here in just a moment. Thank you very much for that. And Talia will be around for questions afterward as well. So if you've got one for her or one comes to mind, keep that in your head, and we'll get the opportunity here in a few moments. Next, we want to turn things over to Whit Tuttell to piggyback off of what has been a conversation from one of our region's largest tourism attractions. Whit Tuttell obviously oversees tourism and gives guidance for all of us throughout the state, but also does a great job of promoting our state as a tourism destination through his work with Visit NC. So Whit, welcome back to the forum, and the floor is yours, my friend. Thank you again for joining us.
All right. Well, thanks, David. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here again and talk to everybody. I wish I had better news, and I'm we were talking about more record-breaking years, which is what we usually talk about, but right now we're talking about kind of where we are. So what I wanted to do today was talk about where we are, what we're doing, and what we see going on for the future for the state's tourism. And so I think you guys can see my screen. We'll talk about what's going on. So right now, since March, we've seen a drop of about 58% in travel spending for the state. It's about a 64% drop nationally, so we're doing a little better than the nation, but it's a tremendous loss. What it equates to really in terms of state taxes is a loss of $235 million in state tax revenue and almost $150 million in local tax revenue since this happened. And it's a $7 billion drop in visitor spending for the state of North Carolina, which is phenomenal. And the little chart I have here shows the nation's occupancy rate for hotels, and the yellow bar is last year and the green bar is this year. And that was took a big dip, as we saw in March, and it's coming back. But as you can see, it's really, I think it's a good metaphor for this whole thing, is it's a long, slow climb back to where we were. And we are making that climb, but it's been a long time, and it's going to take a long time. Just some of the other big impacts we've seen. So commercial hotel lodging revenues are down 44%. So, commercial lodging revenue, that makes up the vast majority of what we see. There are some bright measures. Home rentals and rentals through rental agencies and Airbnb, Home Away, that kind of thing are up. While that's good news, they make up only about 20-25% of the lodging inventory in the state. So it's really the commercial lodgings are the bigger factor for us that we want to get people going to. Obviously, attractions and museums and things like that have been devastated by this. The restaurant industry as well. We've seen a 16% drop in taxable sales for basically the restaurants, and sales down 29% over the same period of time. So restaurants are really struggling. We're seeing everybody struggling. When we talk about the commercial lodging, which I think is sort of the best indicator of where we are, as opposed to where we were last year and where we are in the U.S., as you can see, we're back up to about 44% occupancy for June, which is the last month we have data for. Of course, we were at about 70% last year. It's interesting, this recovery has not been an even recovery in any way. I know of two destinations in the state that their June of 2020 was actually better than their June of 2019. They've actually come back and had that type of success. We're seeing that primarily in the mountains and the coast, whereas the urban areas of the state are still struggling, and we have some areas that are at occupancy levels of around 20% that haven't gotten this far back. So it is a very uneven recovery. And I think where we're going to be is we will easily get back to about 80% of where we were. But it's not going to feel like 80% of where we were, because that 20% that we're missing is really the prime business. That's the most profitable 20%. That's business travel. That's meetings and groups. It's events. I don't need to tell you guys up in that area. It's college football, pro football. Those mass gatherings, and when we're missing those mass gatherings and that business travel and the meetings and conventions, that's the opportunity for a hotel industry to drive rate, because those are the events where you can lift the rate and charge premier amounts for services at that point. So while we're recovering, and I think, as I said, I think we'll get back to about 80% of business. As long as there's not a vaccine, we're going to see that 20%, the most profitable 20%, not come back, and we're going to be feeling it for a while. As David talked about earlier, we've been tracking visitor perception and mindset since it started, looking at it every week to try and evaluate how people feel and get them motivated to travel. And as you can see, this is a chart every week since March 13th up until this week. People in the red bar are very concerned about traveling and contracting the virus. that really hasn't changed. People are still concerned. There's a lot of fear out there. We're seeing that, and we have to deal with that. And much of that I don't think we'll be able to solve without a vaccine. And until that happens, we're going to have to deal with that. I like to talk about the bright sides as much as possible. All the big things people are avoiding are typically not the things we are known for. You know, we're not known for our cruises, our crowded destinations. We're fortunate in that we haven't had much coverage of large outbreaks in the state. So we're not an area that's been identified as an area of concern, such as Florida, some of those other places. Conferencing conventions is going to hurt us. But what really people are looking at is still primarily what we offer. They want to get out, they want to get away, whether it's to visit or potentially even to move there now. We're seeing that as well. So that is a bit of a bright side. This really makes me sad. The orange bar is people that think the situation is going to get worse before it gets better. The blue bar is people that think it's going to get better, that we're sort of past the worst of it. And we had gotten this so close several times to people feeling like we were getting out of it. And now we're really stuck in a period where people still are very bleak in their outlook in where we're going as a country with this, with the virus. Our job really is to get those people that can travel to travel. So how do we do that? Well, there are a couple things we look at. I'm going to focus on them now. One is, are they willing to listen to travel information? And it's still about 50-50. People aren't against seeing travel information, but there are a lot of people that just aren't ready to travel right now. So we've got to change that. We've got to try and get them ready to travel. And that's what we're focused on immediately. And I think the most important thing for us is we've seen this. People, the gray bar is people that were not even comfortable enjoying their own community. So that's going out to a restaurant, going to a store, to a shop, an attraction in your own town. We had seen more people uncomfortable with that than comfortable. And so we need to change that. We need to make people comfortable in their own community, because that's the first step, is going to that local restaurant or going to the local shop. If we can get people to be more comfortable with that, we can extend it out to them traveling to other places. Also, we need to get them comfortable with travelers coming into their community. They're still not, we haven't made the advances in that, and that we really need to make. And I think the key with that is we need to get people going out. So those are our big challenges that we see as a tourism marketing organization for the state in order to get this business back going. And so we've really got a couple of strategies that we're trying to use to counter it. We were fortunate in that we were awarded some CARES Act funding through the legislature to do some recovery marketing. Now the great part about that is that was money we needed to get out there to the public. The challenge of that is it's CARES Act funding, so it's very limited in the way we can use it and how it can be spent, and it really has to promote safety. But I think that's a real opportune time, because we've developed this Count on Me NC program with the Department of Health and Human Services and the Restaurant and Lodging Association. And it's a community pledge. It's a type of thing where we ask people to go to our website, and the people who want to travel, we're going to get them to pledge that they're going to travel in the right way. And we're going to promise to them that the businesses are going to behave in the right way. Much the way Talia said, they're going to clean their places. They're going to space people out. They're going to do all those things to take care of those guests that come. And we need to have these things in place in order to get people comfortable, even traveling in their own community, welcoming visitors to their own community, and then traveling. So this is really the first step, and it's where we are right now with the Count on Me program. So Count on Me, we have a promise that that businesses make to those people, and then we make the leisure travelers can come here, state residents can come, and they can sign the pledge as well and say that they're going to do things the right way. They're not going to travel if they're going to be sick. They're going to wear a mask. They're going to do things that help prevent the spread of COVID. So we've got a website in it, and we've done, actually for the first time, we've done this website in Spanish, and all our commercials and all our materials for this are available in Spanish as well, because we've seen a high impact of this on Spanish-speaking population. And we also think it's important, as we see this is going to be a job crunch as well. We need those folks to be helpful and healthy and to help out. So you can go to countonmenc.com. I'm sorry, countonmenc.org. and you can take the pledge. If you're a business, you can sign up for training modules that we've done for it. And you can also search to see what businesses have done this. So those are the keys. And there are 5 modules that any business can do. You don't have to necessarily be a quote unquote tourism business. These were designed by NC State's food safety experts and health safety experts. They're free if you can go on them and take them. The first 3 courses are really about food safety. But there are 2 courses, the 4th and 5th course, that are really about cleaning and dealing with your staff and things that any business can get something out of. If you take those courses and you sign up, we'll put you on the website and show that you're a participant in the Count on Me NC program. We've had about 13,000 people take the course or sign up for it, so we're really excited about that. We hope to keep this going and promote it, because we think if we can all show that we're doing the right thing, we can make people more comfortable with what they're doing. We're also encouraging everyone to help promote this and show that people in North Carolina are doing the right thing. We've gotten a lot out of social media, and a lot of our partner businesses are displaying their certificates and showcasing that they're part of the Count on Me NC campaign. We're doing everything we can to share the information for any of our partners. You can get all of our ads, all of our details, all of our social signs, anything like that is available for partners that are willing to do this program with us. And now we're really hitting people in North Carolina with this message. The challenge to advertising right now, at a time right now, is you have to be flexible. You have to be quick, because we don't know if we're going to jump to a phase 3 next week, and we don't know if we're going to go back to a phase 1 next week. So a lot of the advertising we're doing right now is digital, because we can shift it quickly. We're doing some television, off the cuff television, which is people who are like cord cutters. We're also doing some cable television, display advertising, mobile, social. You'll see some out of home ads for us. We've seen from people that they need to get this message out, and we've all heard the message. It's wear a mask, keep your distance, and wash your hands frequently. People know that, but they don't want to be told in an authoritative tone. So most of our ads that we've got out, we try and take it in a little light and friendly way. We've got a jingle that we've done that you can hear at countonmenc.org, and we've got a little character that we're bringing around, and we're trying to get the message out, but not be too heavy-handed with it. So we're even advertising in bathrooms in some places. You may see it, because that's a time when you really start thinking about washing your hands and doing things the right way. So that's the current campaign. As I said, it's primarily a safety campaign, and we're trying to get it to people across the state. As you can see, this is an ad we ran in Our State magazine. We got Coach K and Roy Williams to join in, because we really think this is something where we need to appeal to people in North Carolina to say, hey, we're going to do the right thing. We're not going to let this take advantage of us, and we're not going to do things the wrong way and have these outbreaks happen. But we're still going to travel, and we're going to move the economy along in the right way. That's what we've got going on right now. Now, what do I see going to the future? I really think advertising is going to be a little different as we move forward. There's going to be more of that charity aspect, more of that bigger sense of community, sense of doing something right. And this is another program we've started called Cook It Forward NC. The idea here is that we've got chefs from North Carolina restaurants that are going on to social media, and they're promoting their favorite dish at another chef's restaurant. So not their dish, but someone else's. And the idea is that every time one of our chefs does this, they do a donation to the North Carolina Restaurant Relief Fund, which is a fund that was established for restaurant workers who have gone out of work for this. And I really think this is the way we need to look going forward, is it's promoting the fact that we have these great restaurants and have these great meals, but people are giving a little. They're donating some, and they're promoting someone else's business as well as their own. So I think that's going to be the key going forward. You can look forward to more of that. We're going to eventually hope to evolve our safety campaign right now into a safety and inspiration campaign, and then hopefully back into the inspiration business, which is where we really belong. Here's some more examples of what these guys do when they do the Cook It Forward campaign, and anybody can join us. You just type in hashtag Cook It Forward NC, and we're going to do some live demonstrations with it later on as well. that's really where we are. David, I'm happy to talk about anything else as well.
Whit, one question for you before we move on to Dr. Emery. Considering that this side of the state, in this particular region of this side of the state, in the fall and winter especially, we deal with more people that are tempted to get in their car, drive up here, look at the leaves, and maybe drive right back out of here at the same time. Is there any advice that you have from a messaging perspective on things that maybe we can think about as a region to urge them to get out of the car and safely interact with our community when they do come up for looking at leaves, or the people from Charlotte that drive up here to see a snowflake or two, those folks that could be meaningful to us, especially in a year where we're looking for a little bit of everything to help us out?
Yeah, I think the main thing is you want to ease their fears, because that's the primary thing we're seeing is a lot of fear with people. So anything you can tell them that you're doing the right way, that you're showcasing, you're doing things to keep them protected. And as Talia said, show them early on that you care and you're trying to do it the right way. I think most people understand it's not going to be the same season that it usually is, and things aren't going to be the way they normally are. But if you can show them that you're doing it to help them and that it's going to help them and it's going to help them keep safe, I think that's the biggest key to getting people comfortable with coming and actually getting out and experiencing and spending money, because we want them to get out of the car, because you don't spend that much money when you're sitting in the car.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you very much, Whit, for your comments. We'll work on getting you to give us better news next time. So just
I hope so.
we'll invite you back when things are heading up the scale a little bit. Our next presenter, like I mentioned, Dr. Beverly Emery with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, certainly knows, as we all do, that the challenges that have faced our education industry. And I can call it an industry because not only are we helping make sure that our young people get the education that they deserve and need to thrive, but also you're looking at, in this area of the state especially, a lot of our public school systems are larger employers as well in our individual counties. So we're looking at this in a couple of, or through a couple of different lenses as to how the decisions that are being made with how we're going to implement education moving forward have multiple layers that they'll work through in our community. So Dr. Emery, we'll turn things over to you at this point. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your comments about what the state's response is to helping different regions and different counties address some of the concerns and needs that they have in getting school started back here in the next few days.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity, and want to just share really quickly. Sometimes when you think of somebody from Raleigh, I grew up in McDowell County. My parents are still on the farm that I grew up on there. My first teaching experience was at Freedom High School in Burke County at the very beginning when it was open classroom. So talk about innovation there. Also 2 degrees from Appalachian, and am a full-fledged walk backwards in the snow kind of gal. So just wanted you to know that I have a love of and appreciation for the region and all that you do for community members there. I too want to just take a little look back and then look forward on this issue and try to address as much as possible the issue of guidance and decision making, but want to say how much I appreciate the opportunity to listen and learn this morning. And you all know on March 13th, we knew something was coming. We weren't sure. And immediately, I think all of us learned new skill sets for the state of North Carolina, and particularly for the department. That was, when you're not directly on the front lines, what can you do to be supportive? And I do want to just share a couple of things with you. I really appreciated Whit's numbers, and just a couple of things that might have impact for you. These numbers all end, they're for the period March 16 through July 8. The state of North Carolina served 36.6 million meals in that period of time, most of that through delivery or some kind of remote service to students and families. The North Carolina Virtual Public School actually had over 30,000 educators participate in sort of stand-up quick training to help them support remote instruction. We had more than 53,000 educators across the state participate in our digital teaching and learning series. We were able to broker very quickly an agreement with UNC-TV because of some of the broadband deficits that I know you all are aware of in Western North Carolina. We had a 10-week series that ranged from 680,000 to over 1 million viewers, depending on the week in that 10-week period. And those were lessons that were shared from Teachers of the Year and sort of rock star educators across the state. We also partnered with the Friday Institute for Training for Leaders. We had over 14,000 different layers and levels of leaders across the state of North Carolina in our profession participate in that training. Our goals at the department during that time were, how do we communicate and collaborate when you can't figure out maybe what's going to happen next, or you're dealing with an unknown and you're shoved into the role of a health professional when that's not your background or training, but people want you to answer those questions. It's really important to think about what is it that we do well. And I think from an economic standpoint, in the spring, that was, how do we keep our people employed? What does meaningful work look like when some of the supports financially ran out for people? How do we keep our students and families engaged and make sure that some of those basic need levels that continue on throughout the summer, as I mentioned with the meals, are met? How can we help? The other issue that has been a huge pivotal piece between education and economy, I think, has been childcare. And early on in this, we had support to stand up additional childcare across the state. There were dollars set aside from the governor's CARES Act money, as well as the General Assembly. And interestingly enough, participation fell off. In fact, many of the actual school districts that planned to set up childcare for first responders and essential workers did not have the clients to be able to operate. And we found that very interesting. Of course, that has shifted now as we move into this back to school mindset and the concerns that we're hearing across the state for childcare. I would shift from sort of, we managed a crisis that none of us had experienced before, and then we move into preparing for the fall and how do we make those decisions. And as you have already shown here, we are not a state where one size fits all. And while we did have a complete shutdown in the spring, I think tracking these numbers and metrics across the state, there was no way that anyone wanted to be in that sort of ultimate decision of making one decision in terms of reopening. And I don't see that changing for us. I think we're all pushing for better metrics about how we move from one phase to another, particularly given some of the pressures that I know local districts have felt, who may have wanted to open even in an A, where they try to bring all their kids in based on the health data in their community, and others who have had tremendous community support not to open at all and to start in remote learning. And I think Talia may have mentioned this, that we don't see this as short term, while our goal is to have kids back face to face, preparing for sort of this rotating cycle of what this might look like in terms of the health forecast. How can we be prepared for periods where we may be completely remote, periods where we can bring back some kids but not all, and what exactly does that look like? I have to say, districts across the state have been incredibly creative about trying to do that. We've seen the gamut from those who are focusing primarily on the younger grades and trying to use multiple schools, including middle and high, to bring in all of, say, K2, to how do we serve our most challenged populations of children, particularly our exceptional needs children who don't often benefit from the remote instruction supports, teletherapy, and those kinds of things. Just this morning, Scott and I were on a phone call about pre-K, a population that from an educational point of view, we know the research says the more opportunity they have for early education, early understanding of the way even school routines work, benefits them long term. Economically, if we don't capture that population, our federal funding for future years of pre-K support is impacted by the numbers that we serve in this first 90 to 120 day window of a new school year. So these things all have tentacles, much like in your businesses, that impact us. We are trying at the department to help be the sort of the broker of ideas, what's working in certain districts, and a lot of our effort has hinged on communications. We have stood up in the beginning weekly calls with superintendents and charter school leaders. We also started a statewide call with our public information officers that's been incredibly helpful to them, sharing all of the marketing and communications tools that they've used. I would shout out to Scott and Watauga and the just really great job they have done with communications. I think yesterday I saw a digital opportunity to ride the bus and see the community, which typically happens for new teachers. So I think the neat part of this is how we have tried to take experiences that we typically have and that kids and staff typically have and create them in a different way. I think going forward, that challenge has to be, how do we create the new experiences? So not just how do we do what we've always done digitally, but what does new look like? And one of the things I wanted to share with this group today is that we did learn last week that we are one of 11 states in the country that received a U.S. Department of Education K-12 innovation grant. And it really is a challenge to innovate in this time of pandemic. And our focus in our proposal was on how do we create infrastructure across the state. And I don't just mean broadband, I mean human infrastructure that lives beyond a pandemic. What does portable learning look like? One of my aha moments today has been, wow, we've talked about these instructional modules. We should pair them to the tourist industry. If we're not going to be in school, how do we take school to Tweetsy? How do we take school to the aquarium? And we've typically done that as field trips, but can we make it action research, and can we make it engaging for students or families or neighborhoods during these times that it may be more I won't say safer, but more optimal to go to the zoo than to be in a classroom with 25 children. I also would tell you that the purpose of the grant is to think about if learning really moves away from the sort of industrial model of classrooms inside a building and becomes internships and research opportunities for students and travel, and how do we combine a face-to-face, a digital, and an experiential component to that, that there is a lot of room for our business partners, particularly those of you who are so focused on tourism, to help us with that. We are creating an advisory council for the grant. In fact, when I get off with you today, I get to sit through my mandatory federal government orientation so that we can start drawing down these funds and move it from proposal to planning and preparation. But I would invite you to think about what representation might be helpful to us as we put this advisory group together in terms of how do we best represent business and tourism and our western part of the state in the development of these sort of new opportunities moving forward. This is a 3-year grant, as I said, 17.6 million. We're very excited about that opportunity to look at what innovation could be. I'm going to close, and I'm really a person that would prefer to try to answer your questions more than guess what might be on your mind. But I do want to close with saying how much I have appreciated observing from a distance the support and grace of your communities. This is a time like no other. And there is a tendency out there, we've had some mention of social media and the way we communicate, for everyone to second guess everyone. And when I stepped down from my job as superintendent a little over a year ago, I had lived through Columbine and 9/11. I had lived through the first week on the job in Winston-Salem, Forsyth, a school shooting on the Friday of the first week of school during a fire drill where some student opened fire outside. Miraculously, there was really no injury or loss of life there. I say all that to say, in all of those scenarios, what either the studies or the research or our firsthand experience tell us, kids want to come back to school. On that Friday, when kids were scared to death and running in every direction, and it was a massive event, as you might imagine, kids were upset that their Friday night football game was canceled. The adults were all afraid for there to be an activity that night, not knowing was the shooting gang related, or the kids, they wanted to be there. So I think all of us are driven in this profession by the fact that while we know school also provides economic opportunity for parents, we know most people don't look at us as just a childcare opportunity, but it does help as a driving force in our economy, that the decisions that people have to make about either not being in school or not being there the way we want to be are incredibly difficult. And we have got to support our leaders and decision makers during this time. I know without question, these folks want children in school. So with that, I'll stop preaching and see if you have any questions for me.
Dr. Emery, thank you for that, especially the closing comments there. I think hit the nail on the head for a lot of folks right now, and thinking about just the quick changes that we have seen, and whether it's education or anything, we have to be patient with one another and know that like that old ski slope adage, slope conditions change to skier traffic and other weather conditions. We see things change on a daily basis because of the conditions around us. So one quick question for you before we move on to Ben Teague. Do you have any insight about how on college campuses there has been any kind of redirection in educating the future K-12 leaders and teachers that are out there about kind of adapting to some of these challenges that we have seen recently? Has there been much interaction between DPI or any other agencies within the state to make sure that some of that intel for what's been going on in the last 6 months to a year or so is filtering into the classroom to make sure that that next wave of educators has some idea as to what some of the challenges are now?
What a great question for me to give you another pat on the back for Appalachian State University. So early on, the first place that we at DPI have had really good conversation was around this very question. It started more from what does the internship, student teaching, classroom experience look like, and how do we get prepared for that? It has evolved into some policy issues that I think you will see move in the fall around the length of time that we require someone to student teach before they can actually take over a classroom. How quickly can we expedite some of those issues? Because of course we all know we are going to experience some shortages here, particularly I think once this period settles and we have either a vaccine or therapeutic opportunities that allow us to go back to more normal. We already had shortages in the profession, and so we have had some conversations around that, particularly what pedagogy changes may be really imperative in that EPP process for students as they become teachers. How does that look differently? Quite frankly, many of our new teachers are doing much better than others with that. They're more exposed and understand the apps and some of the techniques better, in fact. The most prevalent issue has been, if we are in complete remote, how do we provide those required student teaching experiences and give our future teachers those opportunities? After that conversation, we have had some meaningful conversation with East Carolina University as well, and then the university system. So again, I think App will lead the way here, but there is really good sort of problem projecting, what are those hurdles we're going to see, and can we at the state board level create some policy changes ahead of them so that we're prepared to make those transitions smoother for our aspiring teachers.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. And we'll have some more time to get some questions to Dr. Emery, the rest of our panel here in just a few moments. But first, let's hear from Ben Teague. Again, Biltmore Farms is where he finds his workday spent now, but has been involved in some of the great economic development challenges and opportunities in our region, and has been deeply in that work for quite some time now. So Ben, we'll turn things over to you. Thank you for being a part of the conversation today, and you can take it away now.
All right. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate it. I'm actually going to share my screen real quick and see if I can get that to work. Aha. All right. So let's see. All right. So thanks so much for having me, and just want to stop for just a second and say thank you to Pat Mitchell for inviting me to be on this call, and Bill Slagle. I appreciate the opportunity to be with everybody virtually. I'm looking forward to when we can actually get together in person, because as our health improves, so will our economy. So a better health equal better economy. I'm looking forward to that. And also just want to say a quick thank you as I get started, because checking out the community and just kind of what's happening there all across Western North Carolina. Jason Triplett with First Horizon really spent a good amount of time with me, and appreciate you doing that, Jason. So thank you. And speaking of kind of just understanding what's going on, Biltmore Farms, some of you may know Biltmore Farms, some of you may not, but a unique aspect of Biltmore Farms is our executives have the opportunity to serve on boards across the state, different equity funds or foundations, and a number of different things that allow us firsthand experience in what is happening across the state. And it's a great place to be the Vice President of Strategic Development, where you get so many different touch points of understanding. But not only do we have those experiences, we also own a few assets in different categories. We have office, real estate, we have retail, multifamily housing, single family housing, land, some agriculture. So we get a lot of different looks out there. So I wanted to start the presentation by just looking at a little bit of data real quickly. This is just in the Asheville kind of greater MSA, but it's an interesting graph as it kind of shows the number of cases of COVID over time. And that's the bar chart, the little blue bar chart, and then the 7-day rolling average as the orange line there. And then the number of deaths as the brown line below that. And there's some interesting points here. If you'll notice, like in June, the test, the cases and deaths were very similar. And then you saw this divergence right in the beginning of June. And then you also saw this other point here where there was a takeoff of the number of cases of this very significant spike, which is interesting in itself. But particularly, I wanted to point this out, not because COVID is my expertise or healthcare is my expertise. It's really not. But what it is showing that data at this point in time is very erratic. And so assuming long-term trends off of erratic data can be very dangerous for all of us. So it's really just things can pivot very, very quickly. So what I wanted to do was be able to draw just some broader themes that may be coming out of this pandemic and kind of what we're seeing. So with that, some of the major themes that I am seeing is that I think people will start to focus on needs versus wants. And in a hot economic time, and money is flowing and that sort of stuff, things, needs and wants start to migrate. And I want this, I want that, but do you really need that? And during when the economy pulls back, people start to really retrench and start to look at that. Now, the ebb and flow of the economy is very sharp for certain kind of economic classes. And if you have lower pay scale, man, that is really erratic in your life. But if you're very, very high luxury, you may not see some of those ebbs and flows as sharply as some of the lower income areas. So, for example, yachts haven't really taken this big dip, right? So it affects people differently and their perceptions of needs and want change. But it's pretty apparent to me that people will retrench and really figure out what their needs are versus what their wants. And we'll talk about that. Also, I call it safety and security over cool. Man, everybody wanted to be right in the middle of everything at one point in time. And now we're seeing that prioritization of safety, cleanliness, security start to take a precedent over, I just really want to be in the middle of everything. Which means there's this thought of deurbanization as people can move out of the urban areas. And it certainly has an effect on travel and how it's marketed and where people are actually staying. And then the last theme that I'll tell you about is your efforts today chart the perception of your community tomorrow. And I think in a lot of economic development circles, you see this verbiage, and it could be along the lines, and I believe this is true, but it's mostly along the lines of your recruitment project will look at your community and say, how did you treat the companies that are there today as to how you might treat me tomorrow? And that's a very powerful concept, but I think right now it also has other aspects that that people could point to, which is your efforts today for your brand. Small business and natural assets tend to make up a big portion of your brand, your community brand. Nobody goes and Googles, whatever community, and it shows a big picture of Walmart, right? That's not the brand of the community. It's typically, you see downtown, you see the coffee shops, maybe you see the university, whatever it might be. Those are the things that particularly are identified. And your efforts today to be able to preserve those small businesses are really indicative of how your brand might be perceived in the future. And beyond that, if people don't have a place to spend their money, there's no way to recover. So I would say that your efforts are important today for small business and that. So community efforts also affect hope. One thing I didn't say in the introduction as I was going through all of the different pieces of Biltmore Farms, but when I moved to North Carolina from South Mississippi, I just finished not long before dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And it's particularly difficult and recovery is tough and it's hard work and it takes a long time. But the piece that I saw very vividly was the groups of people, the communities that got to work and did what they could to recover themselves instead of waiting on someone else to just come and save them, recovered much faster because there was this thought of hope. There's a better day tomorrow. There's allows people to have confidence in their business, to be able to take risk and be more creative and more generous to others. It allows your community to gel much better. And your efforts today to be able to create that environment will be indicative of what your brand and how you could be perceived tomorrow. And then last, under your efforts today, your efforts in equity, education, and talent, those are conversation points that are not going away. And there's a lot of thought that, well, if the election happens, these things are gonna, maybe, talent and education fine, but equity conversations, those will go away. And I just do not believe that that is the case. And a number of the site selectors and others out there believe that equity will continue to be an enduring conversation into the future. So what you do today, I think, will also help your perception of tomorrow. So to dig in these just a little bit, needs versus wants. I'm really thinking of capital preservation, really versus profit maximization or experience maximization. If you think of, and I kind of throw out the proverbial, like, hey, if I'm going out to eat, maybe I won't go out to eat tonight. I'll just go get at the grocery store, a Godiva bar. I'll have like that instead of the dessert or whatever it might be, or trip to Western North Carolina versus I'm going to fly to Hawaii, right? So I think the statistics prove out that people are much more willing to drive to their next market or stay very close. And matter of fact, actually, if you look at from January of 2020 to March of 2020, the term flight cancellation was up by a multiple of 15, which is interesting. But conversely, you saw the search terms for small towns, particularly beach communities as well, where people can distance, was up significantly. And there was 100% increase year over year for the search terms cabins for rent, and a 200% increase year over year for RVs for rent. So it's RV rentals. So I think that people are starting to walk back some of their wants of the big vacation to their needs. And you also see that in their home goods spending as well. You'll see them spending dollars on home goods versus gathering with others and allowing them to distance. But I'm seeing a lot of this needs versus wants theme come out in a financial institution. I sit on the board where deposits are racking up, but yet our investment income for the bank is going down because we've got cash from deposits, but we don't have good investments to be able to place those dollars. And I'm sure Jason is probably seeing that at First Horizon as well. We are seeing the ability to place those dollars going down, but people are saving and, quote, keeping their powder dry. So safety and security is a greater priority. Here's, I've got a number of kind of charts and statistics for you, but in general, if you look at COVID safety, people are, I don't want to be sick. Fiscal safety, all right, I need to keep my powder dry and I need to be able to have some room, fiscal room. We're actually seeing weather safety crop up in some of our communities as people coming in from out of the area, Texas, New York, and other Gulf states. Weather is really top of mind for them as well, and natural disasters as well. So those safety items, plus the fact that talent is more mobile now than ever, I think creates an opportunity for rural and suburban markets to be able to get a larger piece of the economic pie versus solely the urban picture. And to kind of walk through that just a little bit, here's a chart that I saw recently on a webinar from Ernst & Young. Amy Holloway did this. Look at the left-hand side of the graph, April of 2019, very low unemployment rates, kind of pre-COVID. And you can see is a pretty tight margin of unemployment. And then, of course, you see that as the pandemic has spread out, the unemployment rates, you can really see that education is a security, a job security function as well. But particularly the bachelor and doctorate, that is your most mobile group of talent that's out there, right? Because they have the ability to, and the security to move around. So where might they be working? This is why I say this is an opportunity for rural and suburban markets. So if you look at the more urban markets that are out there, and Mark Vintner's sitting this over from Wells Fargo, he's their economist. But if you look at the suburban markets versus some of the urban markets, you'll see that people are returning to their workplace faster in more rural markets than urban markets. And if you could see Henderson County being the highest there, the lowest or the most negative piece there being Wake County, Mecklenburg, somewhere around 40% down. Why might that be? And, what could cause that? Well, if you think about a developer's perspective, when they develop downtown urban real estate, a huge factor of how they develop is parking ratios. Well, there's this much demand for parking and there's like this much parking. So how do you solve that? Through mass transit. There could be an aversion for people getting on mass transit with other people there to be able to commute into the urban area. So they just choose to be able to stay at home. So does this play out in economic development, site selection practices? This was just put into from the site selection group. They kind of surveyed site selectors, and it was interesting to say of those consultants where they might likely or highly likely place a project, the highest percentage was in suburban markets, and then mid-size or less than a million people, mid-size urban areas, and then rural, and then large urban. You could almost completely reverse this just before the pandemic, because urban areas were absolutely the most attractive places, because when talent, which is still an issue, is your problem, it's kind of the old saying, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When talent's your problem, urban looks like your one solution, right? But I think that has the opportunity to change. So you'd say, well, okay, I understand this from his work, but what about all the retail functions, and what about all of that goods, buying goods? If you look at the statistics, actually rural and suburban markets are performing better than urban markets there as well. Still negative in certain cases. Haywood County, a more rural market, is performed extremely well. Henderson County is performing similar to just before the pandemic. So, and you can see the more urban markets are actually still have a negative retail and recreation losses there, and traffic patterns, which is interesting to see, because what I would say is just kind of an add-on point to that is the sharing economy, I think, is in a difficult position. Airbnb, which I heard Whit say is recovered well, but Airbnb, Uber, movie theaters, gyms, places where businesses need volumes of people physically in their space to support their business case, are in a tough spot. A lot of times that aligns with urban business cases. And then I would also, just as addendum to that, is the baby boomer generation, which has significant resources, are feeling less safe. Therefore, the economy is seeing them, is certainly seeing them pull back their dollars, and that's difficult. But, where might they be going? If you look at, you see them traveling around. If you look at the number of driving direction requests, that's actually significantly up. So they are moving around somewhere. Again, rural and suburban markets are performing better than the urban markets for that. This is Google, quote, high frequency data. Again, this could change. It's a snapshot in time, but it is interesting to see And particularly, we see this play out for, I'll switch in to kind of talk about some of our personal assets. If you look at our hotels are down significantly. You're half the half the occupancy to 60% of the previous occupancy. But what's interesting is the decisions and the bookings that we're seeing are 50 to 65% of the people who stay with us are making decisions to stay within 3 days of their stay. Typically, you're seeing that long months out, right? But you're seeing people make these snap leisure travel decisions, which is totally opposite from group travel. You're seeing group travel, just like Whit and Talia said, you're seeing those be pushed off to the fall, maybe, but particularly 2021 is where you're seeing assembly, kind of traffic. But weddings, steep decline as well. Those are planned events. So planned stays are being pushed off. Snap decisions are really what's fueling the engine at this moment in time. So how do you combat that? You pivot to military groups, you maybe less profitable groups, government groups, things that might have been more difficult on the margins previously when you were very booked. But what's a fascinating thing is the suburban hotels, at least here, are performing better in some cases than even downtown, which is different because the compression or where you see the most traffic is downtown. But I think that's probably due to big brands or safety perceptions. And the statistics are this. If you look at our downtown, they're down about 54%. Biltmore Village, which is just a little bit off of downtown, is about 50% down. And then South Asheville is about 46% down. Never, ever has this been the case before. Downtown has always outperformed the outskirt markets. So, something has to be going on. I think it has to do with brands that are out there like Hilton that are talking about safety, cleanliness. Actually, saw a statistic that 32% of travelers say that the selling language for them right now is hospital grade cleaning. And you're seeing partnerships out there like Hilton and Lysol, Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic, and they're starting to do a different type of healthcare tourism where you used to think of that as surgeries. Now it's my stamp of approval that says this is a clean location that's driving actual traffic. Just quickly to walk through, I know I'm going to run short on time. Retail is a difficult category right now. Soft goods particularly are down. You're seeing restaurants all over the place. It's not the same experience that you used to have. Again, the hip, cool places that people just had to be. It's not the same thing. People are not having that same experience, but you are seeing strong operators with good brands. People want to return. They just want to feel safe. I would say retail functions with delivery-centric models are going to be strong. You're seeing retailers that are now starting to be bought up by private equity groups that are using their bricks and mortar as a portfolio that they're starting to leverage developers to be able to get their payouts. But they're also pivoting to a delivery model. Like I saw something, a retailer, a developer was buying up JCPenney's to be able to leverage for Amazon's delivery services. So you're starting to see them become, retailers become real estate companies more than they are operating companies. And then the housing market, doing fantastic. And I have a friend in Beech Mountain sold his home, very quick time span, had multiple competing offers and sold for above what he actually was asking on the market, which is a phenomenal second home market. I think it speaks of this mobility and affluent talent that drives that demand. And single family housing and multifamily housing both doing well. But here's just a few quick statistics to demonstrate that. Here's the inventory of homes in sale in Western North Carolina. The the higher line is 2019 versus a much depressed line of 2020. So no inventory on the market. Well, okay, what's coming on the market? What are new listings? 2020, nobody is showing their homes versus 2019. So there's no homes on the market and nobody's wanting to put their homes on the market. So where is demand? If you look at demand, actually there's more closings happening in 2020 as of May than in 2019. I don't think those statistics have really reversed themselves. So super high demand, very low inventory equals great prices for our markets in Western North Carolina. With that, I'll just mention briefly office. It's performing well. It's really in limbo at this point in time though, because 6-foot radius of being safe. Well, does that mean I need to create a 6-foot radius around everybody? And I'm aware of a large company that was in the triangle. They built 2 towers and then built a third one for expansion opportunities. This came along and they immediately sucked up the 3rd tower because they needed to distance everybody. So it could mean an expansion of real estate, or it could mean that, hey, we're going to do this work from home strategy and we're going to shrink up our footprint. And I've seen KPMG and others do hoteling where you kind of check into a space, it gets disinfected and afterwards. So it shrinks up the footprint significantly. So I don't know exactly where that will end up going, but it's certainly kind of a question mark in our minds. But I will say people are social creatures, and culturally as a company, can you imagine onboarding as a brand new employee today? And you have to culturally try to get in sync with your company over Zoom. That's very, very difficult versus in person being able to cultivate that that culture for your company. So with that, I know I've probably gone over my time, but just I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. And we do have a few minutes to sneak some questions in for some of our participants, and I'll go ahead and jump to that right now, and we'll try to conclude this pretty quick. One question, and I think this times out well with a little bit of what everybody said right now, whether it's a public school, whether it's a large retailer, whether it's a ski resort. Can any of you speak to how you are demonstrating cleanliness right now? What are the ways, and Talia, maybe we can start with you. What are the ways that you are impacting your customers by showing what it is you're doing to keep them safe?
Well, I think it's important on that not to be completely honest. Like, you don't want to create this like false persona of perfection, and then your customers come and it's a completely different situation, you know. I think what Whit talked about with the Count Me In platform is a really good way to demonstrate that, utilizing your social media outlets and showing pictures. I think the most important thing though is just demonstrating it in person, like while you're on property. You know, I look ridiculous riding the chairlift alone with a mask on, but you know, I know that if a customer takes a picture and puts it on social media and I'm in my Beech Mountain shirt and I've got a mask on, that's one good way there that organically demonstrated that we're trying. You know, and the other thing we're being really intentional about is when we get compliments on that, if there's an appropriate segue to ask our customers to write a review. You know, we've actually had a couple good reviews in the last few weeks from our, you know, our staff taking initiative and asking people to post about that. So it's coming directly from the customer.
Dr. Emery, over the course of a state worth of school systems, I'm sure you've seen a lot of different ways that this has been done. Have you seen any best practices in terms of, again, another one of those places that we want to be as safe as possible, our local schools? Have you seen anybody do anything particularly outside the norm in terms of communicating that cleanliness if they are indeed going back into the classroom?
I think that this is an enormous challenge when your customers range in age and understanding, and I really have appreciated the thoughts today about that customer experience. I know in our summer jumpstart programs, we visited quite a few of those that attempted face-to-face. I think one of the main opportunities here was how to start with the very young kiddos and educate about cleanliness and the importance of it and their contribution to that, so that we sort of have a collective responsibility for taking care of our own space and why that's important, and more important, I think, than in typically. The other one I saw that jumped in my mind when you were talking, sort of, I think it was a Hilton takeaway, was a district that had some business in the community donate stickers, and they got them really inexpensively. So much like your hotel room, I think their goal is to put stickers on things. So as parents and kids come and go, they see overnight, oh, this room was cleaned by, you know, or some way to personalize that. I'm always a little leery. Do they really clean the room, or do they just put the stickers out there? But a visible way to try to note the point you're making, which is we care about the fact that you care about the fact that this has had a thorough and more than typical cleaning. I will say this is a huge challenge across the state, and not to whine, but just for awareness. We can't use all the same cleaning products everybody else can because of the age of our kiddos. We're highly regulated by the Department of Health and Human Services. You know, so one example, we need to make sure kids use hand sanitizer on the bus, but federal regulations don't allow us to attach anything inside a bus or even put a basket in a bus that holds hand sanitizer. A human needs to literally administer it for it to be legal. So I think I would say right now the challenges to doing this well, and I'm sure we'll figure them out, are great for folks in our business.
I'll sneak one final question in, and then we'll conclude the event. You've got a lot of representatives from the business community here in Northwest North Carolina on this line. To all of our presenters, and Ben, we'll start with you on this one. What can be helpful in terms of the business community in this part of the state, maybe aligning with some of the other interests here in trying to champion infrastructure improvements? I think specifically about broadband deployment here, and knowing that whether you're a business, whether you're a family with a school-aged child at home, we need to step up the deployment of that resource in this community. Are there some other things that hang out there that maybe the business community can be supportive of, and making sure we advocate and lend our voice to, that can help other sectors of our community respond?
Oh gosh, that's a really big question. I would at least reaffirm your broadband conversation. I think that your moment in time through this and this opportunity for Western North Carolina through the pandemic, and I hate to say it that way, but it is an opportunity for us. Broadband is a lifeline. It's the lifeblood of communication. That talent that's highly mobile, highly paid, if it cannot be able to do its work from your location, then you're going to be starved out of the new economy. So I think that has to be a high priority, which you said you're already doing. So that's fantastic. I would also say the healthcare, acute healthcare, and health in general is extremely important to the next generation, but also those activities of distancing and that sort of thing. That's, I think, a big part of your economy, but it's also a part of the returning economy. The healthier people are and the healthier people feel, the better your economy and things will be opened up. And so I would just do exactly what WIT is kind of doing, is empower people to make the decisions that will keep them healthy as well as their customers healthy, because this is not a one organization deal. This is not an EDP&C deal. This is not a Biltmore Farms or a Boone Chamber deal. It takes everybody, and it's not going to happen otherwise. So businesses, I think, probably should get on with the healthcare challenge or the health challenge of saying, we're going to do our part. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Any of our other panelists have anything else they'd like to allow on that?
Well, I'd just say, I think was really important what Ben pointed out earlier, that part of the character of all our communities are these local businesses, the ones that are unique and distinct to that area. And a lot of those are the ones that are suffering, the independent restaurants, maybe the little hardware store that was a general store that had a great story to it. So the more businesses can do to help those unique and distinct businesses, that's going to help everybody in the long run, because that's the reason people make these trips. They go to see that unique flair and personality, and we got to do everything we can to protect it.
Very well said. Dr. Emery, Talia, anything you'd like to allow? No? Okay. All right. Well, that will do it for today's presentation. I do want to take the opportunity to thank our panelists here, Whit Tuttell, Talia Freeman, Ben Teague, and Dr. Beverly Emery. I'm going to send contact information for those folks out to you, along with Whit's PowerPoint presentation here as soon as we get the archive back. So if you've got any follow-up individually with these folks, I'm sure they'd be happy to engage with you in that way, and certainly appreciate them doing so. For those of you that ask more specific questions in the chat as well, we'll make sure that we get answers to your questions throughout the course of the rest of the day today. So again, thank you for thinking as a region on some of this. As well. I think, again, we're stronger when we can act and unite together, and we've got plenty more through Vision Northwest North Carolina that we'll be rolling out here in the next few weeks to keep this conversation engaged regionally as we move forward, so we can all rebound and get back to the things that we know we can do well together. So thank you very much for your time. Apologize for going a few minutes over, but I think you'll agree that the information today was fantastic in helping set our path forward for the fall. So thanks for being here, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.